On Christmas Eve, Fritz and Mary were looking forward to unpacking their presents. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was their uncle with a bunch of gifts in his hands. The children were very happy to see him. Then they began to unpack the presents. Mary got fancy dolls, toy dishes, and a beautiful silk dress. Fritz also got what he wanted, a magnificent horse and a mouse king. Mary noticed that there was a soldier under the tree. It was the Nutcracker, designed to neatly crunch hard nuts. The girl really liked it. But Fritz said it was his gift and tried to take it from his sister. The children stretched the Nutcracker so far that they tore his arm off. The broken toy became unnecessary for the boy. Mary was very upset and burst into tears. But my uncle was able to repair the soldier. The girl was happy and hugged him gently. The day was very busy, so she soon got tired and fell asleep right under the tree. During her sleep, Mary heard strange sounds. They were like mouse fuss. The girl opened her eyes. The objects in the house seemed much larger than they were. And the tree under which she fell asleep became absolutely gigantic. Mary realized that it was not the objects that had increased, but that she had decreased. Suddenly, the Mouse King with his army appeared before the eyes of the astonished girl. Mary was very frightened and wanted to run away. But the giant mice stopped her. And then a miracle happened. The Nutcracker jumped to his feet and grabbed the girl. They instantly climbed the tree to the bookshelf, and along it got to Fritz's toys. There was a whole collection of tin soldiers. The Nutcracker called for help. The soldiers immediately jumped to their feet and ran after him. The Nutcracker took command of the army, and the soldiers began to fight the army of the Mouse King. The battle between toys and mice was fierce. But, unfortunately, there were too many mice, and the Nutcracker army began to suffer defeat. Mary saw this and ran out of her hiding place. She threw her shoe at the Mouse King and hit him right in the head, and he fell to the floor unconscious. The rest of the mice realized that the battle was lost and ran away in all directions. Mary ran to the Nutcracker, but he lay unconscious, as he was badly wounded by the Mouse King. The girl thought that he was dead, and began to cry bitterly. And suddenly, a beautiful fairy appeared behind Mary. She decided to help the girl. With a wave of her wand, she revived the Nutcracker. With a second wave of her wand, the fairy turned the soldier into a handsome prince. Mary and Nutcracker looked at each other with loving eyes, and could not take their eyes off. With a wave of her wand for the third time, the fairy took the couple in love to the kingdom of sweets. The trees there were made of candy, and the flowers were made of marmalade. It was a wonderful place. Mary closed her eyes for a second in pleasure. And suddenly, she heard the voice of her mother, who called her by name. Opening her eyes, the girl saw her mother, who looked at her in confusion. Mary also could not understand what was happening. The girl told about her wonderful journey, but her mother only smiled sweetly. Then Mary saw the pewter Nutcracker in her arms. And then she realized that she had slept under the tree all night, and everything that happened to her was just a vivid dream. A few years later, the nephew of their godfather came to visit Mary and Fritz. As soon as he entered the house, the girl almost fell to the floor in surprise. The boy looked like the Nutcracker as 2 drops of water. He also liked Mary at first sight. After some time, they got married, and lived no worse than in the magic kingdom of sweets. Lemuel Gulliver was born into the family of a poor English landowner. The boy was the third of 5 sons. At the age of 14, he became an apprentice to a famous London doctor, and then got a job as a surgeon on a ship.
Cool.
For 6 years Gulliver traveled to different countries, observed the customs of the natives, and even studied their language. And so Gulliver set off on another voyage on the ship Antelope. But did not have time to pass even halfway, as the ship fell into a terrible storm. The storm hit the ship against the rocks, and the sailors jumped overboard in horror. And only Gulliver managed to get into the boat. He was carried for hours on the waves, and soon by a miracle the boat washed ashore. But Gulliver was so exhausted by the storm that as soon as he stepped on the ground, he immediately fell asleep on the nearby lawn. The rays of the first sun awakened Gulliver.
Oh, no!
He tried to get up, but realized that he could not move. His arms, legs, and even his hair were tied to the ground with a net of small ropes. Suddenly something tickled Gulliver's chest. He raised his head and saw a little man the size of a finger. It was the king of the Lilliputians. He gave the order, and then thousands of small arrows, like needles, began to stab Gulliver's body. The prisoner immediately realized that it was better to submit. He showed by signs that he was hungry and thirsty. Then, by order of the king, food was brought to him. More than 100 natives climbed the stairs to Gulliver's mouth, pouring baskets of fruit, bread, and meat on him. When Gulliver ate everything, he was taken to the capital on a specially made platform. The prisoner was placed in a huge temple, chained to his left leg with many miniature chains. It was the largest room in the entire country, but even into it the giant had to walk on all fours. At a meeting of the Lilliputians, the king ordered to provide Gulliver with a staff of 600 servants. They sewed a suit for the prisoner and even a bedding for miniature mattresses.
Nice.
And over time, the king was convinced that the giant is kind and therefore released him. Gulliver traveled a lot around the country, studied the customs and language of the Lilliputians, and even participated in their holidays and parades. Once, while communicating with the king, Gulliver learned that Lilliputia was at war with the empire of Blefuscu, located on a neighboring island. The reason for the contention was that the Lilliputians could not agree with the Blefuscans on how to properly break the eggs. The Lilliputians split them from the sharp end, and the Blefuscans from the blunt. And now rumors reached the king of Lilliput that the enemy had prepared a fleet and was about to attack. Then the emperor asked for help from Gulliver, and he willingly agreed. And so, under cover of night, Gulliver took long ropes and swam to the enemy ships. He tied a rope to each ship and dragged them to the shores of Lilliput. The guards, who were the only ones on the ship, jumped into the sea and started swimming away from the giant. So Gulliver completely disarmed the opponents and received the most honorable title in the kingdom for this. For this, the courtiers disliked Gulliver. They began to weave intrigues against him, and soon the king himself accused the giant of high treason. Rumors spread throughout the kingdom. And Gulliver learned that at the Privy Council, it was decided to execute him.
Oh no!
Therefore, that very night, Gulliver made his way to the shore, where he left his broken boat. Having quickly repaired the boat, the giant left the country of the Lilliputians in a hurry, taking with him 6 small live cows, 2 bulls, and the same number of sheep and rams. Gulliver sailed on the ocean for a long time until he noticed an English ship.
Yes!
On it, he safely got home. But, as it turned out, this was just the beginning of Gulliver's adventures.